Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Yoga Life podcast with me, Kevin Boyle. The last podcast was episode 0, and I mentioned that I was due to start my advanced 300-hour teacher training the next day. Well, that was 2 months ago, and I'm sitting here now at my desk going through all my notes that I took at the Bryce teacher training, just typing everything up and uploading all the photos and videos. So I thought it'd be good to do a podcast about my experience of those 16 days, because it was pretty intense and very memorable. If you're someone who is a yoga teacher now, maybe you've done 200 hours, you may find this interesting. It's a big decision to make, a big investment to make, not just financially, but also for your time, because it's 16 days every day, 7 in the morning until 5:30, 6 in the evening, and it's pretty demanding from a physical point of view. So hopefully this will give you a bit of insight and also shed a bit more light on Bryce, the Dice, and also Briohny. So let's start with how I heard about Bryce. It was about 2 years ago when I was doing my teacher training, my 200 hours, and I was speaking to a really experienced studio owner in Dublin, and he said to me that he was looking into doing another teacher training. I was kind of surprised to hear this, because this guy has a lot of experience, like over 20 years, and he mentioned Bryce. So Bryce is, I had never heard of them. Before that, he was shocked that I'd never heard of them. And he said, yeah, it's this couple from the States, and they teach particularly inversions and handstands. And that's their niche in terms of physical practice. So I put it into the back of my mind and thought, okay, that's another year or so away. So I'll kind of cross that bridge when I come to it. And then around the same time, I was looking at a documentary called Why We Breathe. It's a yoga documentary where they interview loads of different yoga teachers. And during the interview, Dice featured, and this is the first time I seen him. So I thought, oh, this must be the guy who that chap was talking about, who does the training with his missus. And so the first thing I noticed was my impression after I did my 200 hours was that there wasn't very many men doing yoga or teaching yoga. That is the case if you live in England or Ireland. And the men that I did meet were not like me, or what I mean by that is they were kind of really bendy, or had long hair and all wore hemp, and maybe carried bongos around in their arm. They were, whereas I'm kind of, I'm not going to say a regular Joe, but I'm, I don't know, like an ordinary Englishman or Irishman, whatever I am, I'm not sure. And no, I don't have long hair or a top knot or that type of thing, or beads and loads of tattoos. And so I was in my 200 hours, I was the only guy. And I thought to myself, am I really going to make a living from this yoga business? Is there demand for male yoga teachers? Is it a bit unusual? And I think whenever you choose to dedicate your life to a profession, it's good to have someone or people that you see as, maybe not role models is the right word, but as people you can identify with. And so when I seen Dice in this documentary, I didn't realize he was a teacher first. He kind of, crew cut hair, talked like a regular dude. He wasn't very mystical in the way he spoke, talking about energy or anything like that. He was just like a regular dude. Used to do CrossFit or whatever, or like fitness, skateboarding, I think, or something like that when he was in school. And then got introduced through yoga as kind of just because it was offered to him because of the company he worked for. And I just liked his approach. He was very laid back, and I thought, this guy seems pretty cool. And that sent me down a rabbit hole of looking at Dice's videos on YouTube, and once you start seeing his physical practice, it's really impressive. I mean, he can do things that very few people, your yoga teachers anywhere in the world, can do. Coupled with the fact that he came across as a really easygoing guy, I thought, okay, this is maybe I will look into booking this when it comes available in Dublin, this teacher training. So that was my first impression of Dice. My first impression of Briohny was that it was different because I think I first came across Briohny on, or I'm going to call her Bry because I know the name's pronounced differently, a little bit different in America, so I'll stick with Bry. When I first came across Bry, I seen her on social media, on Instagram, and I found that a lot of her stuff was like really beautifully done and very well polished and like very artistic, but it was almost so perfect I couldn't really relate to it, and she could do things that I would never be able to do. So and I think I didn't resonate with her as quickly as I did with Dice, so I was a little bit like I thought, oh yeah, she's cool, but really it was Dice that attracted me to Bryce. When I seen her on Instagram stories as well, she was very pleasant, very nice, but Dice just seemed more relatable to me as a yoga bro. So the training became available in a really nice studio that's close to where I live. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to go for this. This makes sense. I've been teaching now for 6 months or so, since my 200 hour, and it'd be a good time for me to upskill. Signed up. It came around faster than I thought it would, and then we rocked up on day one. So on day one, when they came into the room, we're all sitting around a bunch of trainees. There was about maybe 40 people on the course. There's a lot of people. The room was jammed, and it was a large room. And when they first came in, it was a little bit like I was trying to retain or quite dampen down my inner fanboy when Dice came in. I was just like, hey, how's it going? When I see him in the dressing room. And he was very shy actually, which surprised me a little bit. He always comes across as very humble, but he seemed to be very unassuming, kept himself to himself, friendly, but not overtly friendly, if that's the right word, not particularly outgoing. Bry was the outgoing one. She is the outgoing one. And so how they set it up was they sat us down and they said, okay, you can refer to us as Bry or Dice, or Bryce will respond to both. Bry said that she was the mummy, or is that what they say in America? Mummy, whatever, with an O. She was the mummy of the teacher training, and come to her if you've got any emotional needs, and whereas Dice was the more physical. He's more interested in the physical practice, which I don't think is actually necessarily accurate, but it was kind of, I suppose, good to have two distinctions, a distinction between their two roles. And straight from the get-go, they were really receptive to hearing what we had to say. They got us all around a big circle, and we introduced ourselves. We did a kirtan, this was new to me, which is singing with the Dice plays the banjo, or is it ukulele? I think it's the ukulele. Dice plays the ukulele, and we all sat around singing. So I thought, oh, okay, this is going to be a little bit out of my comfort zone, which I was worried about that before I started. I thought, I'm cool with trying handstands, but singing, and it gets more, not cringeworthy, that's not the word I'm looking for. It gets more expressive, shall we say, as the days went on, but I'll get into that later. So what I noticed was they were very much focused on the physical side of things to begin with, but then they covered everything from the asana to philosophy to business, teaching methodology, So it was really well rounded how they taught it, and every day that they would teach, they were so receptive to us giving our opinions. So this actually just I was amazed by this of their skill in communicating. I would describe, I mean, I said it to Dice that I consider them to be master communicators. For example, if they're talking, either Bry or Dice, if someone puts their hand up, they will always address that person and say, do you have a question? Feel free to ask. Even if they're running over time, even if they, it's lunchtime, whatever, they will still hear everybody out if they have a question. They do this so well that they actually, even if someone makes a point and it's not a particularly good point or it's flat out wrong, they won't be rude and correct them in front of everyone, because I suppose the psychology behind that is they don't want people to feel self-conscious about giving their opinion, and they want it to be an interactive environment as opposed to they know everything and we know nothing. Actually, at one stage, someone made a point which was completely wrong and didn't make any sense, and Dice said no. He said, no, that's not, like, as in, no, that's not right. And then Dice went back to them like seconds later and said, actually, when I said no, what I mean is, it could be if you think of it that way, but if you think of it this way, then it's not. So he did it in a really diplomatic way, and therefore leaving the trainee feeling a bit better about themselves, that they were not right. So as well as being able to have everyone interact, they were also really good at making sure everyone had a voice. So if someone had a question, they would, when the person asked the question, even if they went off on a big tangent, they would still come back to that person and address and make sure and say, look, did I answer your question? Does that make sense to you? They would never go off go off on a tangent to show what they know. And in fact, they even said, and I quote this verbatim, that they are not perfect and they don't know everything, and everything they know has been learnt by other teachers that has been passed down to them, which I thought was a really nice way to show some integrity. In terms of they also address the fact that they're not, I suppose, officially together. I suppose that's public knowledge, but they, despite that, they had amazing chemistry. I mean, they can see they have real good respect and love for each other, and they were really fun with each other. They worked so brilliantly as a partnership. They were able to play around with each other, and even the communication between them was so supportive. They would never cut each other down or try to upstage each other, and that created a really nice environment for everyone, really. And although they weren't strict in terms of telling people to be quiet, they had a clever system for getting people's attention. What they would do is have a series of 7 claps. So they would clap 5 times and we would clap the last 2 times. So it'd kind of go like this, and then we would go that, and it was brilliant because it, instead of it being like shh, be quiet, it made us it was a way of kind of getting us back into the class and back into learning, which is pretty clever. They were so honest as well. For example, there was one morning where Bry was late, and Dice said, okay, Bry's not here because she slept in, because the alarm didn't go off. Now, we would be none the wiser if he just said, oh, Bry, I'm taking this module and Bry will be in for the next module. But instead, Dice was honest and said what happened, and we thought, it makes you think, okay, cool, these people they're human, people sleep in, that happens. And that just, it was so encouraging because it makes you feel like you don't have to be perfect, and occasionally stuff like that will happen, which was nice. So I'll go into the actual day-to-day itinerary for the training. We went in at 7 a.m. We did a 2-hour practice. Then we'd have the breakdown of the asanas. Then, or like they'd normally pick 1 or 2 asanas that they would break down. We would teach each other the asanas. Then we would pick a particular one to focus on, break that down. We'd do business, we'd have lunch then, we'd do a business module, do a philosophy module, and then have an hour and a half practice in the evening. And in between there, we'd throw in things like acro yoga or games that would help us to improve our communication skills. And all in all, I mean, it was very tiring, physically tiring, but I felt that immersion, I don't know, being immersed really helped to soak up all of that knowledge. I found that, for example, the 200 hour, it was every weekend, 1 weekend a month for 13 months, which was fine, but having to wait a month between each training session was just too long. I learned a ton. I mean, so the main things I learned, actually, this is a good time to tell you this, is that yoga can be fun, really fun. Bryce, Dice, and Bry, their classes they taught were just phenomenal. I mean, changed the way I thought about yoga. When I did 200 hour, there was a massive emphasis on safety and teaching the correct alignment all the time. Whereas Bryce would say that, yes, people have to be safe. That is a priority. But ultimately, you have to let people have some freedom as well in their practice. And everyone's body's built differently. Everyone's skeleton is different. So therefore, someone having the knee over the ankle or the knee past the ankle is going to be different for different people. And depending on other variables like what posture they're doing, what their toes are doing. And they just giving us that freedom to be more creative. When I was doing the practice that Brian and Dice were teaching, I was buzzing. I mean, the music was pumping, sweat was pouring. They were really challenging us, making it really fun and really into it. I'm a huge, so I'll break down Brian and Dice individually now. So with Dice, I watch all of it. I do his Yoga Glow videos almost every day. That guy is he's completely authentic from my impression. He's just so likable, and you can tell he works hard and really prepares his classes, and he lives it as well. He doesn't get high on his horse. He knows his limitations. For example, putting the leg over the head, or like I say, a full splits. I think he can do like almost the full splits. But he'll say, "Oh, I can't do this," or like a fire log pose. He'll say, "I can't do this, but if you can do it, then go for it." And simply saying that shows your vulnerability as a teacher, and that gave me so much relief and took loads of pressure off my shoulders when I realised that you don't have to know everything, and you can be way more creative and fun with your students. He also would he wouldn't talk a little bit about philosophy, but he wouldn't go to a level that in a pretentious way. He would make it very real, which really resonates with me, because although I like philosophy and I like to think philosophically, I can't go too deep because I don't because it would feel disingenuous. I mean, I'm practicing myself, that area of my teaching, and I am getting more well versed on philosophy, but it doesn't. He has his own style, and it made me feel more comfortable having my own style. So that's him as a teacher. Obviously, as a practitioner, he's incredible what he can do. And what's really encouraging to know is that when he started out, he wasn't able to do a handstand, and he was saying that he used to he made a hole in his wall in his apartment from like chucking his legs up against the wall trying to do a handstand, and that it's simply through 10 years of practice that he can now do what he can do, and that's really encouraging. Yeah, so as I said, he was quite shy at the start, and I think he's generally, I mean, he said it himself, he's a shy character, but by the end, when we got to know us a bit better, he was really friendly. I mean, he was always friendly, but he was more outgoingly friendly, you know, had a bit of banter with us in the change room with the other lads. And, you know, I remember actually on the last few days, he sent myself another chap a message to say about going climbing, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool, you know, like Dice has sent me a mere mortal I thought, a message about going climbing, and yeah, just that's kind of cool, man. When someone you respect is on your level, you know, and like that, it's nice. So yeah, he's been really supportive since the training on social media, and you know, so I'm looking forward to seeing them again in August, because that's when the second part is. So back to Bri. And a little breakdown of Bri. With Bri, she really was the mummy figure in the teacher training. She was incredibly impressive in every aspect. From a physically point of view, I mean, she's obviously, her practice is really strong. But more than that, communication, her business mind is incredible. She is really sharp, really on the ball of what's happening in terms of the yoga industry. Really, she wouldn't suffer fools gladly either. She's doesn't take any shit, basically, but not in a nasty way. She's just very shrewd and very wise. I would describe her as. She also is very caring, and at the start I thought I didn't know what to make of that, because I thought, is she just playing a role here because, you know, she's a pop star before and maybe she's used to performing? But she genuinely is a really caring person. She would really look after us in class, and she'd come up to us. When she speak to you, she'd make you feel like you were the only person in the room. She just, like, she's not saying things just to because she has to. And in fact, she actually said that sometimes she will baby talk students in class, in a large class, because that's what they when you're talking to a massive class of 60 people, you have to be kind of subtle and delicate in your language. So she recognizes that, but she's legit. I mean, she's real, very genuine, and also since I've stopped, since the course ended, the first part of the course, she's been unbelievably supportive on social media, sending me messages, giving me shout outs. In fact, today she tagged me in a message, which inspired me to do this podcast dedicated to the Bryce teacher training, saying, well done, I'm very proud of you, tag me in the next post. So I'm going to tag her in this post. But she's great. And what was most inspiring, although the business modules were really good and they gave us examples about how you can monetize your yoga practice, where you can make money from workshops and classes and festivals, that type of thing. What was more influential to me, or inspiring, was their journey and the fact that they've had to put up with adversity. For example, Bri was talking about when she did the video for Equinox, and she was funny. She was saying how she would keep refreshing the tab on YouTube to see how many views it was getting, but then she'd scroll down to the comments and they were really nasty. Well, not all of them, but some of them were a little bit nasty, haters and all that, trolls, in the saying oh, look at this, whatever, wearing a bikini teaching yoga, who does she think she is, whatever. So it just shows you that when you have a million fans, for example, or whatever number you have, there's always going to be 1% of people that don't like it for whatever reason, and to keep going. And it's really nice to hear those real life examples. Also with Dice, his example, which I really liked, was he was teaching Equine Equinox, and then the CEO of Yoga Glow was in his class for a couple of years, and he didn't realize that it was the CEO of Yoga Glow. So that's how Yoga Glow came about. It just shows you that you're teaching. You don't know who's in your class, but if you just keep consistently giving good classes and you show that you care and prepare, and you teach with enthusiasm, that's so important. Enthusiasm, man. That good things will come of that. It doesn't matter really what you say about yourself. It doesn't matter what you know. What matters is what you can teach and how you make people feel. And what I learnt from Bryce, what they taught me, was a ton. And I left feeling like a new man, like a new teacher. It's been life-changing for me. And I can't wait for August. I have nothing more to say. I'm sure I'll turn the mic off now and things will come into my head. But for now, that's pretty much all I have to say. Can't recommend Bryce highly enough. The two as individuals are just, they're great. And I'm honoured to be part of the Bryce family. Actually, just to finish, they said that if you do a Bryce teacher training, you can help them you can assist in their trainings in the future, and essentially anytime they're doing a workshop or anywhere in the world, you can come along and practice without charge. And that's really cool, man. I mean, they're keeping you as keeping you like your pigeons or something. They'll be keeping you as a part of the family. Big love to Bryce, and check him out when Jamaican there. And that's it for episode 1. Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on iTunes, or if you're on Android, you can use Castbox, and if you're on an iPhone, you can use Overcast. They're the 2 apps that can play the podcast. If you like this podcast, then please leave it 5 stars, and feel free to comment. If you'd like me to chat about anything else in particular, please let me know, and if it sounds good to me, I'll do so. I plan to get guests on. Sometimes it will be just me speaking. So thanks again for listening, and hopefully I'll speak to you next week. Bye bye.